Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism and narcissistic relationships, healing from narcissistic relationships, what happens to you in these relationships. And I'll tell you one thing that happens is how over time you've not only dimmed, but in some cases turned off your light so that the narcissistic person's light can shine. So let's take this on. So for a narcissistic relationship to work, you have to give in to what works for the narcissistic person. That's the basic and most singular rule of engagement in these relationships. Now, this doesn't happen overnight. It happens very slowly. Slowly but surely. Initially, you might have even held your ground, gotten into the arguments, but you slowly stop holding your ground. You hold back more. You walk on eggshells. You may stop contradicting them or even hope that they are listening. But in addition to that, there is something even more nefarious happening. You slowly but surely learn to turn off your light. It doesn't happen all at once. These are relationships, like I said, of indoctrination, of the slow burn. You don't consciously wake up one day and say, I'm going to focus on making myself small and I'm going to make sure I don't excel or shine. But we almost get, for lack of a better word, I'm going to say, we almost get trained in these relationships to not have our light shine. And there are a few reasons for this. If your light is shining in a narcissistic relationships, and in some ways you almost become like an open target. The narcissistic person may feel competitive with you, jealous of you, and as you excel, you become a bigger target for them to take down. Children who grow up in narcissistic family systems will recall that in a weird way, it was almost as though their narcissistic parent was competitive with them. Though that would not become clear to you. You're not going to make sense of that as a kid. It wouldn't become clear to you until you were well into adulthood. As you excel, there is a schadenfreude type of glee that the narcissistic person almost gets in the face of your setbacks. They actually are kind of happy when they see you set back a little bit. And they're willing to participate in those setbacks and make them happen. There also may be mockery. They may minimize or trivialize whatever you accomplished or whatever good thing you're doing. They may devalue the things you do. And a real struggle is, especially if you have a vulnerable, victimized, passive-aggressive narcissistic person in your life, they may become quite sullen if you succeed. They may become angry, quiet. They may even start putting themselves down. And as so many of us do, we may downplay our achievements to soothe them, to appease them, so they don't feel less than us. We may even feel guilty about doing well. Their victimhood may boil down to, nothing good happens to me, even though I deserve it more than you. And it will always leave you feeling a little funny. But if it's you that is succeeding, then the whole thing feels like a convoluted mess. And then you may face the heavy-handed play of them sort of threatening to step away from the relationship or leave it. There may be a vibe of, well, you're off doing your own thing now. You don't need me hanging around. And again, if you have a nice bone in your body, you may try to fit them into the good thing that's happening. You may try to put them front and center with you in your accomplishment. Share the glory, talk them up, tell other people how instrumental the narcissistic person was in your success, just so they feel as though they are part of it. And then they don't leave you. And of course, by definition, narcissistic people are competitive. And this competitiveness may translate into them trying to beat you at your own game or to do so much better at their own stuff that you are eclipsed. They may also try to insinuate themselves into your stuff. If you are running a business, they may try to worm themselves in there to be a part of something you did most of the legwork on. And again, out of guilt, pity, and trauma bonding, you may allow them to join your venture. And I promise you, you will regret doing that for the rest of your life. But your success, your moment in the sun, your spotlight, even if it's not ostensible honors and praise and awards kind of thing, but just maybe that you're a bright, happy person whose light attracts people to you. They're not going to like that either, and may put you down and say things like, oh my gosh, you're like a big dumb dog, or why do you need so much attention, or they'll accuse you of being fake, or other things that are simply not true. And the downstream effect of all of this is that slowly but surely, you start turning down your own light significantly. Being bright and being seen by others or succeeding almost feels dangerous, setting you up to be insulted, humiliated, jabbed at, mocked, or even turned into a joke. While you know, I don't want you to share your accomplishments of good things that happen to you with the narcissistic folks. The problem and the danger is you may just stop sharing them with everyone. And not just because you are humble, but because it becomes a safety response that you've learned to turn your own light off. You may become more subdued in social groups, even though that is not your way, but because it feels safer. You may not laugh as loud. And the bigger problem is that you may not put yourself out there, and you may hold yourself back in other ways. You may not try new things. You may not take a chance on a new idea, not invest in yourself, and not take center stage when it's appropriate, and you would in fact be a real asset. You turn down, and you ultimately turn off your own light. The terrible thing about this is that the narcissistic folks around you are just fine with this. They won't take note of the fact that you did it, and you may even barely notice that you did. The funny thing is when we engage in behaviors to feel safe in our relationships, we rarely notice them. We're doing them to stay safe. They aren't a tactic. They're a way of us protecting ourselves and even a response to what feels like a threat, and a way for us to be able to maintain a relationship with someone who's manipulative, but perhaps we don't quite get it yet. And as you keep turning your light down, theirs can continue to shine, which, like I said, is an imbalance and an asymmetry that they're okay with. The sense people get, whether when they're growing up with narcissistic parents or being in narcissistic relationships, is that basically not existing is the safest place to be. So as a result, keeping yourself subdued and quiet and unseen becomes safety, and your light gets turned off. And this has major ramifications for healing, because as you navigate your way through radical acceptance and grief and guilt, you will get to a place of autonomy and individuation. That time when you start getting to be you allowing you to be in the world as yourself, and either learning to not give a damn about what the narcissistic person thinks, or they're out of your life. And then you find that little pull cord or switch to turn, like a light switch on your back, and slowly turn it on. And when you first do it, it'll feel like the light is dimmed, and then you will slowly make it brighter, move that dimmer switch up. And even as you initially do this, you will be waiting for someone to jump out and call you out and say, oh gosh, you're such a show-off, to make fun of you, to berate you, to shame you. It's a sort of hypervigilance that people who have been through narcissistic abuse have about being seen, especially in the early phases of healing. When we do these things to maintain and stay safe in our relationships, we also tell ourselves stories to make it fit. We tell ourselves that we don't have much to say, that we aren't that good at things, that it's hubris or bad form for us to draw attention to ourselves, that we are attention-seeking exhibitionists for simply wanting to share something that we know. This is how narcissistic people control us and keep us down. And this is why turning your light back on, coming into yourself, and learning to disengage from their opinions of you is so important. Because when it comes down to it, they aren't noticing you enough to really know what you are doing. Narcissistic people are better programmed to view folks as threats than to really take notice of what you are genuinely doing. And so shutting you down allows them to maintain power. Their criticism of you isn't even based on them knowing what you are about. It's merely a projection of their insecurity. I say this at length in my book, and I reinforce it here. You have to turn that light of yours back on for no other reason than the world needs what you can offer it, your ideas, your creativity, your knowledge, your true you. And I am not saying this as a vapid, positive pump up. I am saying this as seriously. You may know shit we need to know, and you not sharing it may actually be slowing progress down for lots of people. It's a tentative crawling back for you, and it's a tentative emergence. I remember as a kid wanting to be seen like this, watching with absolutely rapt curiosity at kids who were seen like this and wondering what it felt like. It's actually bizarre that I share my work publicly because I still to this day do believe, who the hell do I think I am doing this in front of a camera? And I do wonder how much of my introversion is really me and how much of it is the safety of my preference for not being seen. I'm not saying that any of this is easy. It's not. But when we recognize that we did turn off our lights and that was one more trauma response, one more safety response, one more attempt by us to try to maintain attachments with other people, in the most basic way, we turned off our lights as a way to show the narcissistic people we love them. And folks, that's not love. That's subjugation. So figure out where your switch is, start slow, and recognize the function that originally happened, that you turned your light off. Why did you do that? Because I'll tell you, it only served one person's needs, and that was the narcissistic folks, the people who believed that anyone else's light would obscure theirs. So get those lights back on, and as you do that, you light a path for people who are starting their own process of healing too. Thanks again.